Autofocus is brought to you by Garage Build. Submit your build, share your passion. Powered by Dennis Kirk.
My name is Tom Kefir from Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. My shop name is Franklin Church Choppers. Been in business now for about 4 years. All right, well, this motorcycle is a 1944 Harley Knucklehead that started out, believe it or not, with just one single carbon fiber front wheel that I worked out with a friend of mine who needed a narrower wheel for a Dyna, and he had this wide glide wheel that he bought at a charity auction. So I got him a wheel and ended up getting this one. And then I traded a Harley 45 frame to Freddie Bowledge, and I got an original set of Harley Knuckleheads. They were drilled for panheads, but they were original Knuckleheads. That's how the bike started. Went from there and talked to Lee Clemens and got a set of engine cases, and went ahead and built the motor completely up from there. And Barry Wardlaw welded up the panhead stud and put it back to the Harley Knucklehead bolt pattern so I could go back to Harley Knucklehead cylinders, and basically that's where it started. So I'm a little odd in ways. I really enjoy bobbers for the most part. I like a bike that's light, nimble, and it's fun to ride. Maybe not necessarily on your back all the time, but I enjoy the bike. I enjoy the light nimbleness. I'm a smaller guy, so I usually do mid-controls. I talked to Danny Toast, and I wanted an inverted front end, but I didn't want to spend the money for an Oleans or for even like a Harley inverted front end. So I called Danny, and he says, hey, I got a 1999 GSXR front end. He says, I'll give it to you. I was like, really? So I got that. Once I got it, I shaved the leg on the right so it didn't have a brake. I took all the mounts off for the fenders, and I kept the left brake mount. So I have a single left brake on this wide glide front end. It's inverted, so it rides real well. These are true pair of carbon fiber wheels, so they don't weigh anything. They're very, very light. And so I got the old school of the Knucklehead, but yet I got the carbon fiber wheels and the inverted front end. But then on top of that, I made it up a Harley, not a Harley, but an aftermarket 6-speed to the Knucklehead. So I have cruising capabilities on the highway. I can cruise along at, I think your not max speed, but max comfort level is about 70 miles an hour on it. I mean, it's a rigid, you get a lot of air in your face, but it's a lot of fun to ride. I'm really decent, very good friends with Brock Davidson from Brock's Performance. He imports the BST wheels. He's got 6-second, 7-second boosas on the quarter-mile track on carbon fiber wheels, and they're very rarely having a failure. So if it can handle that, I think it can handle a 40 horsepower Knucklehead. I'm pretty good friends with Billy Lane, and way back when he did a build-off, he used these wing nuts. And I thought it was really cool, and I was down in the shop working with him a couple years ago, and I opened up a cubby drawer for some bolts, and there was a whole there must have been 100 of these big-ass wing nuts in there. They were 1/2-inch coarse thread. So I asked him, I said, hey, can I take a couple of these? He goes, yeah, take what you want. So I took them, drilled them, tapped them, and then put them in my mill, and then I cross-drilled them, and then I polished them up and sent them out for chrome, and that's what I use for the lug nuts, or not the lug nuts, for the axle nuts on the front and rear. I've done that on a couple bikes now, and then they actually will take torque. They're torqued all the way to 55 foot-pounds with no issues at all. They don't break the ears. And then I just safety wire them just because it adds another little point of interest, another little point of detail. Plus it's safety. They're mounted, there's a hidden mount in the back, and then there's a small mount in the front, but I cut it off and I actually inverted it so it was up underneath so you didn't really see it. They're just real narrow with no center console. I just kind of like the narrow look. I'm never going to go further than about 60 miles at a shot anyway on the thing, so it's plenty of fuel. Yeah, I was at the V-Twin Expo a couple years ago, probably 15 years ago, and there was a company selling all kinds of forward controls, and he had these couple sets of just arms sitting there, and I asked him if I could buy just the arms, because at the time I didn't even have a mill, and they were already chromed, and they looked pretty cool, so I took the brake arm and the shift arm, and I then made the mounts for the mid controls and just kind of configured a couple plates and then made them out of that. So, well, I started working on bicycles at 5, 6, 7 years old doing, I lived in a trailer park. I grabbed bicycles from people that were destroyed, and I'd take 3 or 4 and make a bike and ride it for a couple days and sell it for $5, you know, and then do it again. And then my dad was an auto mechanic by trade, always told me that I wasn't allowed to do that. I had to go and be a tool and die maker or be an engineer or something. Well, turns out I was really good at working on cars. So then all of a sudden, that trade and all that stuff was pretty much out of the question. So I went ahead and started working full-time, probably in 7th grade in the shop, like full-time after school, every weekend, nights, weekends, holidays. And that really got me into the mechanicalness of motorcycles. So I kind of pride myself more on the service, repair, rideability, good form and function rather than just looking pretty. But I can't build a bike that isn't shiny. I've tried, can't seem to do it. So this, during COVID, Michael Lichter had a more metal show at the Buffalo Chip in South Dakota at the Sturgis Rally. And some people weren't able to come into the country, so Michael, I sent him an email, a text message, and said, hey, I heard you might need some podiums filled up. If you need something, I'm available. So he had me send him a couple pictures. He loved my one red Knucklehead. It's an S&S knuckle. And so he invited me to the show. What we didn't know is once we got to the show that year, everybody was in the show that year was asked to come back the following year and build a from-scratch brand new bike. And one of the requirements for being in that show was you had to be in business for 20 years, and I think you had to have built at least 20 bikes or something. So I fit those requirements. So when we found out we had to build a second bike, I already had the front wheel and the heads, but then realized I had 1 year. So I went ahead and built this bike to try and be better than the first year's bike. And they're side by side, they're both pretty damn cool. So I don't know which one's better, I just know they both are cool. Paul Cox did the seat for me. Did a real nice job. Took a little bit of time, but it was the pan that I wanted. Everything is perfect. He did a great job. I'm very happy with it. It's a Moon oil tank. Got an S&S E carburetor. The heads were already drilled for pan heads, and then they actually put pan head nipples in the heads. So I went ahead and just used a pan head intake and I put a Super E on it. Yeah, actually I got invited to be on the High Seas Rally as an invited builder. So this was the one that sat down in, it was right out the Schooner Bar. It was right outside the Schooner Bar, so it was in a great location. I got to talk to a lot of cool people. That was a really cool cruise. I really had a good time. So my name's Tom Kefir. My shop is Franklin Church Choppers in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. And you're watching Cycle Source TV.